Yesterday, we had a young person that needed to be taken off life support. And that's a very difficult situation for everybody when it's a young person and for a family when it's very sort of unexpected. And I honestly spent a lot of time just being with the family and with the staff to support people. And that's sort of part of my role, is just to be there in that way, to kind of comfort and support and guide people in maybe the ways to be compassionate during times like that.
You've just heard Nadine Kaslow, professor in the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at Emory University School of Medicine. Eric had the opportunity to sit down with Nadine for this 226th episode of Psych Sessions, conversations about teaching and stuff.
Hi, my name is Brooke Wisenhunt, and I'm from Missouri State University. And one of the things that excites me about STP is that I feel like that is where I found my professional home. After spending a lot of years going to other professional academic conferences, I landed at a conference full of people from STP and really felt like this was the place that were my people. And I think that that's something that you can miss out on if you don't join this organization. So go to teachpsych.org and please join and become one of these people that is a member of our community.
Psych Sessions is proud to partner with Macmillan Learning. At Macmillan Learning Psychology, content matters, and these days, digital content matters more than ever. Macmillan Learning's Achieve elevates interactive teaching and learning with an extraordinary range of online course content in a powerful yet easy-to-use platform. Interactive ebooks, innovative assessments, engaging videos and activities, helpful instructor resources. Achieve brings it all together and makes it easy for you to find what you need and what you want. See for yourself. Go to macmillanlearning.com/psych sessions for an introductory tour today. Macmillan's Achieve for Psychology, engaging every student, supporting every instructor, setting the new standard for teaching and learning. Hey everyone, Garth here. Thanks for listening to Psych Sessions. If you could go to wherever you listen to our podcast and you would follow that podcast or like it, it really does help us as we are trying to get out to more teachers of psychology. Also, if you haven't checked out our website, please visit psychsessions.org and sign up for our monthly newsletter. We offer free resources and valuable news that you are going to want to know related to the teaching of psychology. Thanks.
Welcome to another episode of Psych Sessions, conversations about teaching and stuff. Every time I interview someone, I say this, and I mean it every time. We have a very special guest today, and I am thrilled to be chatting today with Dr. Nadine Kaslow. Let's see, if I give all of your appointments, we won't have much time left, but I think the two main ones are a professor of psychiatry and behavioral sciences at Emory University, and I think I remember your title is Chief Psychologist at Grady Memorial. Is that correct, Nadine?
That's correct.
Awesome. So thank you very much. I really appreciate having our time together. And in a little bit, I'm going to tell a story about the last time we had time together, but I don't have to leap into that. So have you been teaching this semester, or what's your work schedule like?
So I teach, but it's different than undergraduate teaching. I teach psychology interns and postdoctoral residents and psychiatry residents. So I teach a weekly live supervision family therapy seminar where people see, it used to be couples and families in front of the one-way mirror, and then we were behind the one-way mirror, but now we do this all on Zoom, and then we use Teams to do the supervision and then give feedback back on Zoom. So it's actually worked out really well to do that virtually. And I also teach a postdoc seminar every week for our psychology postdocs. And then I run my weekly research team meeting for the NIA project. And there's a lot of teaching that comes in that. And we have undergrads at that, as well as postbac students and grad students and interns and postdocs and faculty and sort of everybody learning together.
So it sounds like that a lot of the teaching that you're doing these days is one-on-one or one on a small number with the grad students and the postdocs. You're not teaching a section of 200 students in Psych 101.
No, I am not doing that. Yes, and I do a lot of weekly supervision with people for psychotherapy supervision.
Yeah. Well. And those are folks that they're trying to generate their 1,000 or 2,000 hours for licensing?
That's correct. Those are people doing that. And then, of course, I also have people doing research with me as well, undergrads, grads.
So maybe the most salient thing that listeners can get from this, and I'm going to ask you this question, I don't understand how you do it all. Nadine, how do you do it all? Because you're doing it all.
I work a lot of hours. I mean, to do a lot of things, you have to work more hours. So
yeah, but we have a lot of colleagues in our field that work a lot of hours, and they don't. So I just did a little quick Google search this morning, and I went to Emory's website and read your bio that's posted there, and you know, I'm not quite sure there's an award that you haven't won. First off, let's start there, but secondly, I saw the number 380. That's probably out of date, but in your career, you have 380 publications. And then if you keep scrolling on that website, it has a list of recent ones. And I don't know if you know this or you've thought about it this way, but you're averaging one a month.
Wow.
In 2025. So yeah, it is wow, but how do you manage? Is there a trick that you use to managing your time? How does that work?
So there are several things that I think help. One is I'm pretty efficient.
Obviously.
I think that helps. And I have sort of good systems in place, both in my head and just, you know, online or whatever, to help me sort of stay pretty focused. So I think that's one thing. I think the other thing is I like working collaboratively, and I believe we can get more done as a team, whether that's a publication or it's advocacy effort or whatever it is. And so I surround myself with good teams, and we can be productive together. And
I'm sorry.
And have fun together.
Do you have any, like, I think I'm looking for a magic bullet, right? Do you have like a software, like if you get an idea, you're on grand rounds and you get an idea, do you have an app on your phone that you type it into, or do you use like Mendeley for reference? Are there any software aids?
I use EndNote for reference.
EndNote, okay.
And I have tens of thousands of references in there, and I keep that up to date and current and the like. So I actually block into my schedule sort of all those little things that we have to do in life. I actually put them in my schedule for when they need to be done. All the things that kind of get on the to-do list. And I have a to-do list, but instead of having it like in a separate app, I integrate it into my calendar.
Okay.
So that has actually worked better for me to have it all integrated, because then it tells me to do this right now. And so that helps. And so I keep that running to-do list, but I place it on my calendar.
Do you spend most of your typical days, are you more on campus at Emory or are you more at the hospital at Grady? I'm
more at the hospital, either at Grady Hospital or at Emory Healthcare,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And
I do a lot of kind of administrative and leadership things on campus too, but I'm more at the hospital.
Can you describe for our listeners a little bit about what a chief psychologist does at a hospital that's so huge and so massive like Grady or the Emory?
Yes. So, I do several things. So I would say my work is a combination of taking care of patients, teaching and supervising learners and junior faculty, conducting research, and doing administration. And so on any given period of time, it's kind of 25% of each of those. Sometimes it's much more one
Right.
than the other. So part of what I do in the hospital is make sure all the psychologists and the psychology learners are doing what they need to be doing, going to meetings, things like that, taking care of patients. But then there are crisis situations that come up. And
Right.
I have a relatively new role in the dean's office as the director of well-being, resilience, and flourishing. And so
Wow.
I spend a lot of time, I've always done this, but during the pandemic, really did a lot of it, taking care of healthcare workers on the front lines and building programs around that, but also being there when there are crisis situations. So, for example, yesterday we had a young person that needed to be taken off life support. And that's a very difficult situation for everybody when it's a young person and for a family when it's very sort of unexpected. And I honestly spent a lot of time just being with the family and with the staff to support people. And that's sort of part of my role is just to be there in that way to kind of comfort and support and guide people in maybe the ways to be compassionate during times like that.
I can't think of any more important decision someone would make about a loved one, whether or not to take them off life support or not. I mean, that's, that's, I want to say big, but that's an understatement. That's the biggest, really. I mean, what more important decision could you make about another human being to do that? So thank you for sharing that. It makes me think of a couple of things I want to ask you. So first off, you mentioned that you were asked to take on a new role by your dean.
Mm-hmm.
So with my colleagues, I try to counsel them, and not that you need my advice because you don't. I try to counsel them. If you want to take on this really cool new thing that an opportunity comes along, then what are you going to stop doing so that you can do that? And so, Nadine, do you ever do that? Like when the dean asked you to be this, and it sounds really cool, but what was it? Belongingness, resilience, and flourishing?
It's well-being, resilience, and flourishing.
Yeah, I mean
So
we all need that. So, but how do you take on this new thing? And I'm guessing that you probably don't shed other things.
No, I do shed some. I would say I don't shed probably as much as I should, but I definitely shed things for sure. You can't add 15 hours a week and not take off some hours. That's just not humanly possible.
Right. I tried. Yeah.
So I sort of went through the list of everything I did. I took a month to kind of write down everything that I did, and I looked at the things that maybe would be good for other people to do or might help somebody else's career, or I'm not that interested in that now, but somebody else might be interested in it, or it doesn't really fall in my domain. I was doing it, but somebody else can do it. So I didn't shed the equal amount, I would say, but I certainly shed certain things for sure, because I totally agree with you. I give the same advice. I try to heed it. I don't get an A+. I probably get a B- in heeding that advice.
Well, your B- is like an A+ to the rest of us. Let me just give some context for that. The other thing is I was listening to that I started thinking about is that you're giving all of this care to your students, to your colleagues at the hospital, to patients at the hospital. And if this is too personal, we can just skip it. But who provides that care for you, or how do you do that self-care?
No, I don't think that's too personal, honestly. I think that's an important question we all need to to ask and be able to answer. So I would say there's sort of several levels of that. I have really close family and friends, and people I trust and can talk to and do talk to, and who provide me support just like I do with them. Historically, I had a therapist for a very long time, and that was extremely helpful in those ways. I also continue to go to ballet. I continue to take ballet classes and teach ballet, and that's a way for me to sort of get out of my work headspace and do something really different and stay physically active, and involved with a different group of people. And then I have sort of things that are scheduled in my life that are really important to me. So I have theater tickets and I go regularly to the theater. I see a Thai massage person once a month and like to add some trips to the spa with somebody that I'm close to and really enjoy that. And I've been really committed to taking at least one major trip a year. And certainly I would say starting in 2017, probably I got really serious about that. Obviously took a break during the height of the pandemic from that. But for example, last year went to South Africa and Namibia and Mozambique, and I went to Antarctica. And this year I'm going to, I went to Singapore to Bali, from a cruise from Singapore to Bali. This year I'm going to South Pacific archipelago, Fiji and Tahiti and places like that, Bora Bora and Papeete. And so I've been really good about doing that too. And that's another form of self-care for me.
And it's great to hear that, because I think sometimes people give advice, but don't always follow it. But there's clearly some work-life balance for you in multiple ways.
Yes, there has to be some, probably not enough, but there has to be some. I mean, it was crazy when I was president of the American Psychological Association. One time I flew to Australia, gave some talks, sightseed for a day and left. And I'm like, this does not make any sense. This is, I'm practically spending more time in the plane than I'm spending in the country. And I decided that had to go. And so
yeah. So you've given me a bunch of questions to ask you. I'm going to come back to APA in a minute, but I want to ask you about ballet. Has that been a part of your life since childhood or young adulthood, or how does that factor in?
I started doing ballet when I was 3. Wow. And I went up to a professional ballet school. I danced professionally for a brief period of time, but clearly had an academic career. That was important to my family and to me. And so I continued to dance through college and actually started teaching ballet when I was in college, started a ballet program at my university, continued to dance. And then when I was sort of doing the tenure thing and whatever, I honestly put it on the back burner.
Sure.
And I regret that. And I went back to dancing pretty seriously. Maybe 15 years ago now, and did that. And then the pandemic, that sort of went on hold. Zoom ballet was not great. And then I think because I work in a hospital, I was kind of more rigid about my COVID rules and didn't feel comfortable going back for a while. But I'm back taking ballet, I would say probably averaging 3 times a week now. There was a period I was doing more like 5 or 6, but I have kind of too many other demands for that to be working right now. But pretty good about 3 times a week. And I enjoy teaching, and I'm the psychologist for the Atlanta Ballet.
I just lost. No, it'll come back. It sounds like if you want, I know what it was. and I will edit that out. Me, tripping and slipping over my own words. There was a piece in there where I thought, oh, she's human, meaning, oh, you had to cut back on something in order to get tenure. And so I wouldn't have been surprised if you said, no, I did ballet 6 days a week while I was earning tenure. That wouldn't have surprised me. But I think for us mere mortals out here, that was kind of refreshing to hear that the challenge of tenure was challenging even to you.
Oh, absolutely. I gave up a lot during those periods of going up for promotion or tenure or whatever, because again, if you get really focused on the work and the grants and the tenure application, whatever it is, you don't have time to do some of these other things. Right. I wish I had kept a little bit of it going. I think I sort of got overwhelmed and didn't keep any of it going. And if I had to do it over again, which I don't, I would have tried to at least keep a little going.
And then you also mentioned your APA presidency. Can you, what is it in the history of APA? There's been 125 some people, maybe 130 by now, who've done that. You're one of those folks in that rare air. Can you talk a little bit about that and what that experience was like, other than a quick trip to Australia?
Sure. So I didn't just become APA president, unless you're really a big household name in psychology. You don't just become president of the American Psychological Association. So I was really actively involved in various divisions in APA and boards and committees for decades before I became president. Really learned the organization. I think leaders need to understand the organization or system that they're leading. And so I was involved with, the division of couple and family psychology and of psychotherapy and of, sort of multiple divisions I was president of within APA. I was on the Board of Educational Affairs and the Board of Professional Affairs and multiple work groups and task forces. And then I was on the APA Board of Directors before I was elected president. I loved being president of the American Psychological Association. It was a fabulous experience. I met so many different kinds of psychologists, both in different specialty areas and doing very different things than me. I don't think you and I would have met if I hadn't been APA president.
Yeah, that's right.
And so really connecting with people who have chosen different paths in psychology than I have, but that we have so many shared interests anyhow, both in our country and globally. I really got to, spend time in different countries, talking to psychologists with different interests at the World Health Organization. And it was just fabulous.
If I'm remembering correctly, you were APA president in 2014. That's
correct.
That sounds right. And so I think you're right. We wouldn't have met if it weren't for you and APA presidency, but also, and you won't remember this, and that's totally okay, but it's a big deal to me. You presented me with an APA presidential citation.
Oh, I remember that, because I really tried, some people present those to their friends.
Sure.
And I really was invested in a couple of things. When I presented presidential citations, I took those really seriously. And one was to people who had made meaningful and important contributions across psychology, not just in the areas that I am focused on, but across psychology, really the diversity of the profession. And the second was that I really wanted to give some presidential citations to some early career psychologists who have made a difference. Sure. And so those were two things. I wanted a diversity of people, diversity defined broadly, and with attention also to the breadth of our field.
And by
So
the way,
I asked around
good.
who were the important people in, teaching of psychology, for example. And that's how I came to you.
Well, I'm very thankful for that. It is framed in my office at school. And whenever I'm asked for my bio, it is a line in my bio. It's an incredible honor. And it's doubly an honor because it came from you. And so
Thank
someone
you.
so respected in our field. Nadine, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about growing up. And I think I've shared with you probably my favorite question to ask people, which is, when you were growing up, was the question in your household, would you go to college, or was the question, what college will you go to?
Oh, there was no question in my household. It was, what college would you go to? But it was more than that. It was, what degree are you going to get after college?
Oh,
And
wow. After college.
After college. And there was sort of a communication that it should be a degree that ended in a D, an MD, a PhD, a JD. But that was sort of the message that we got. Now, that doesn't, my brother has a really successful career and chose not to go to school beyond college, and has done amazingly well. But that education was a huge value. My mother got her PhD in psychology when we were in elementary school, which back in the 60s was unheard of. She was the only woman in her graduate program. There were no women on her faculty. But so lifelong learning and going to school and getting degrees was part of what we were exposed to from the time we were really young, actually.
Did you have a chance to present at a conference with your mom, or co-author a poster or anything like that?
So when I was president of the American Psychological Association, I invited my mom up for my presidential opening ceremony, and we interviewed a family together. Actually, I gave a Lifetime Achievement Award to Dr. Beverly Tatum, who at that time was the president of Spelman College. And because my mother and I are both family psychologists, I invited her family as well. And so we interviewed them together. We wrote a few things together, and we've been on boards together at the same time, actually.
Yeah, I have a handful of friends throughout the psychology community who will talk about mothers or fathers publishing with their sons or daughters, or presenting a poster, and they just rave about it to the end of the earth, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. It's just that satisfaction of, across a generation, family members getting to collaborate, and so I've heard really, I don't think I'm going to experience that, but I've heard really amazing ththings when that can be experienced.
Yeah, it's very special. I think for both people.
So, Nadine, I want to ask you about high school, if that's okay. I think I have a prediction, but I want to see if I can confirm my hypothesis. You were busy and active and involved in 16 clubs, and you were a leader of clubs. Maybe sports, maybe drama, maybe debate, maybe band. Am I anywhere close to getting it right?
Well, of course. But because I did ballet every day, that was a big part of what was going on in high school, which was outside of school. So I did that. I was involved in orchestra. I was involved in drama. I was not involved in sports. I don't even think we had debate back then.
Gotcha.
And there weren't that many girls' sports either. I just don't, that wasn't the culture in the same way. And I think because I was dancing so much, that was sort of my physical, what I did physically. But yes, I was involved in lots of activities, and choreographed and student directed the high school musical, and actually choreographed our graduation ceremony. and they used that choreography for decades. So I went to a large high school. There were over 1,200 kids in my graduating class.
Wow.
And so choreographing the graduation walk was sort of a major contribution I made to my high school.
1,200. So where did you go to high school?
Abington High School outside Philadelphia.
Oh, okay. So was that school 9, 10, 11, 12 or 10, 11,
Yes.
12?
No, 9, 10, 11, 12.
So were there close to 5,000 students in that school if you had 1,200 in your graduating class?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. It had to be bigger than a lot of college campuses to house that many students.
Yeah, there were like there were two lower campus and upper campus, or North Campus and South Campus, I think it was called.
Gosh.
But yeah, there were a lot of people. I think because there was so much tracking with AP classes and things like that. I'm not sure it always felt that big, but I see it's time for one of those big reunions, and I look at the yearbook and I'm like, oh, I don't know.
So, okay, will you go to your reunion?
I don't think so. I'm not saying no yet because people keep reaching out, but
of course they do.
It's interesting. My brother's 3 years younger than me, and he has really, really close high school friends that he still gets together with a lot, and he will clearly do these things. And I have really good friends from high school, but they weren't in my class. People I'm still in touch with, but weren't in my class, and so I don't know that I feel that motivated to go back. But
that younger brother, the baby of the family, they're going to go and be all social and extroverted, whatever,
Yeah, he has great friends from there, and I consider them like other brothers, and that's been great. And I have really good friends from that time, but like I said, they weren't from my class, so I don't know yet. I haven't decided.
Okay, well, and if anybody listens to the podcast, Dr. Kaslow has not committed, and so don't get your hopes up about that. I wanted to ask you about when you went to college. Did you declare psychology as a major right away, or were you a ballet major, which would have made sense?
I declared psychology a major right away. I wrote that on my application, and I went to college in 3 years. And so it was probably easier that I had declared psychology a major because I was pretty focused on what classes I needed to take and started doing research my first year. So I was clear about that.
So there's a couple things to unpack there. First off, how were you so sure about majoring in psychology? And then I want to come back to I did it in 3 years.
Well, like I said, I grew up, my mom was a psychologist, so I think I knew more about psychology than probably most people going to college. So that was one thing. I think I seriously considered medical school also, but I wasn't as good in the sort of sciences, and I could see that pretty early on. And I wasn't as interested in the sciences. And I had fabulous undergraduate experience in psychology. So I just knew, I think, more. But the other thing, and I know you're not supposed to write this on your application to grad school, but the truth was I was one of those kids other kids would come and talk to about their problems. And I liked doing that. And I liked reading books that were psychology related, stories about people's life with various mental health challenges or whatever. And that's what I was drawn to in high school and middle school. And so it was clear it was sort of connected with my interests. And I knew I wanted to get my doctorate in psychology. And so between AP credits and summer school and winter intercession court classes, I was able to do that.
And then when you went to grad school, was it a clinical PhD? What was the degree you were pursuing?
Yes, I got a clinical PhD.
And I can guess the answer to this question. Did you? I don't know what the normal timeline is. I mean, for a regular PhD, it'd be 4 years, but I know there's a practicum and other things that the clinicians and counselors add on. At what rate did you go through graduate school? Like, did you get done early compared to the typical rate?
It's a little harder to answer that
Right.
question because I didn't do something like the 3 years kind of thing. It wasn't like off the chart kind of thing, but it was at the early end. I wasn't alone. I was at the early end. It was the shortest amount of time you could do it, but it wasn't shorter then.
And then did you leave? I'm sorry. Did you leave
Yeah.
graduate program with your license? Was that the arrangement at the time?
No, you had to get that extra year of postdoctoral training before you can get your license. So you had to do an internship and then a postdoc.
And where did you do your postdoc?
In Madison, Wisconsin. I did my internship and postdoc in Madison, Wisconsin.
Really? I love Madison.
Great place. It's just too cold for me in the winter. But I loved my experience there.
Yeah, my first job was at the University of Wisconsin Platteville, which was about 2 hours to the west of Madison. And in summers, here's the thing I remember about Madison. At the time, this would have been back in the 80s and early 90s, you could walk into their main library and you could walk up to issue 1 of every psychology journal, every psychology journal ever published in any language. And so you could go up to like, I'm trying to think of one of the early journals, American Journal of Psychology or something like that, first published in 1888, and you could take it up off the stacks. And I just geeked out about that. And plus, Madison had the lake, and
it's beautiful. Yeah. In the summer, Madison is beautiful. It was just the winter that wasn't my cup of tea.
Right. So is that why you landed in the South?
I went to New Haven after I finished my postdoc, and I spent 6 years on the faculty at Yale. And then I moved to Emory after that.
Okay. All right. Was Yale, does Yale live up to the stereotype that we give to them? Or at that time, maybe? I think we all have a halo effect about Harvard and Yale and Princeton and Stanford. And
so I think that the undergraduate education at Yale is fabulous, absolutely amazing. The opportunities, the resources. I think the faculty are really smart and thoughtful and sort of do cutting edge work. And so although that is true, I didn't find it personally as collaborative as an environment as I like to be in.
Sure. So Nadine, I heard you give a talk at Rocky Mountain Psychological Association. It was pre-pandemic. And I think a good chunk of that talk, if I'm remembering, was giving advice to the discipline, kind of like what's coming up, what do we need to be doing, what are, kind of like, what is it, strengths, weaknesses, threats, opportunities, that kind of thing. I'm keeping an eye on time, and I only have a little bit left, but I want to be respectful of your time. But what kinds of things do you see currently and on the horizon that our fellow psychologists should be thinking about?
I wish I had an answer to that question right now. I feel like there's so much change in our nation right now that it's harder for me to have clarity about that. And so I've been sort of looking to people who inspire me, who I respect, who I value, to help me sort of think through that as I move forward, as we all move forward. I think that there are several sort of thoughts that I have about it. I had the amazingly humbling opportunity to be at President Carter's funeral. And while I was sitting there after having talked to an incredible group of people that were there to honor and thank him, there was essentially an hour of silence as sort of political people came in, and we waited for the family and President Carter's body to arrive. And I was reflecting on President Carter's time after he lost the second election for president. And what did he do during that time? And I believe that what he did is stay true to his values. He didn't fight against what he didn't agree with. He said, this is who I am and this is what I stand for. And he created the Carter Center and waged war to ensure peace and was a humanitarian throughout his life. And so I think what we really need to do as individuals within psychology and as a field, as a discipline, is to be really clear about our values. And we need to stick to our values. And we need to lead by our values. I think we need to acknowledge that this is a really challenging time, but that the things that matter to us, we need to continue to articulate and fight for, but that there's no one right way to do that. And we're each going to have to do that in a way that speaks to us and support one another as we continue to do that. And so our values on inclusivity, our values on belonging, our values on diversity of thought, on finding common ground, those are things that we need to continue to articulate and to advocate for, and to be role models for our students about that, but also partners with our students as together we try to navigate this time in our lives. So I think that it's almost a time where we need to, rather than think about going forward, we need to go back to our core and be really clear who we are and what matters to us.
Yeah, I'm just reflecting on what you just said. First off, it's really well said, and secondly, like we were talking about kind of before I hit record, these are challenging times, and I think reflecting on values and being values driven at your core, values centric, makes perfect sense. It's hard to be optimistic these days. I think I naturally fall into the pessimistic mode most of my life, but around my students and my colleagues, I do want to try to be a positive role model. And it's really unclear how to do that day in and day out. Well, I don't know if Emory's doing this, but at Boise State, I actually served on the faculty senate for the past year and discovered that every time we revise a policy in our faculty senate, we're doing a find and replace on diversity, equity, and inclusion, because that's coming down from our state board. And so it's difficult to watch that happen and to have plausible alternatives that work.
Right. I could not agree with you more. So I think there are several things that we need to do with that right now, as somebody who has been the vice chair for faculty development and DEI and been a real leader in that space and had to do that same find and replace. It is more than find and replace.
Yeah,
we're changing things. It isn't just a find and replace. I was the founder and co-director of the Women's Leadership Program at Emory, and that is no longer the Women's Leadership Program, because we're not allowed to have programs specific to groups, that preference groups. That changes what the program is. And I think part of what we can do about leaders is be transparent about what's going on, be honest about what's going on, to acknowledge, no, this is not just a find and replace. This is actually a change. And to not change things that we don't have to change, that we don't want to change. We do have to survive. But we have to find a line between survival and doing what we have to do in our jobs and not doing any anticipatory compliance, in my opinion, and holding firm our own lines and deciding if we can't go over a line, then how are we going to navigate this? What are we going to do? But I think that what we're lacking in many places right now is enough communication, enough transparency, and enough dialogue amongst faculty and amongst faculty with students about we're kind of in this boat together. And how are we going to go forward, and that we don't always know.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I haven't had the leadership opportunities that you have, but I've had a couple of them. And when I was department chair recently, transparency might have been the most important thing that I did, just to share with people how we made decisions, share with them the budget numbers, share with them the challenges coming from the dean's office and the provost office. And just, I don't think it necessarily made people feel better, but I think it made them have more trust in what was happening because they were informed about it, even though at times we can't control our own destiny as a department or as a unit. And
I would argue that if people have more trust, they feel better.
Yeah, I would too. Nadine, I wanted to ask you as we get ready to wrap up. We made this appointment to do this maybe a few weeks ago. Was there anything that you've been thinking about that you said, I want to make sure I talk to Eric about this on this podcast? I want to make sure that you have as close to the final word as possible. Was there any topic that you said, oh, I want to make sure I mention this or that? Or do you have a book coming out? Or is there something that you want to promote? And anything that
I guess what I want to promote to students is that it's really important to do things that are meaningful to us. That not what everybody else wants us to do and not what looks like the right thing to do, but things that give us a sense of meaning and purpose. And when I think about what has sustained me during both good times and challenging times, it's been that I've made so many choices to do things I truly care about. And that for me, it's often about taking care of others and paying it forward in ways. For other people, it's going to be other things. I don't think it matters as much what it is, but that it gives, your life a sense of purpose, and that you follow your passions in that. And that so often we feel like we have to give up those things to get forward in life. But I really think to get forward in life in ways that matter, it's to do what we're passionate about, what we love, and it gives us a sense of purpose and meaning, and that will give us hope, including during challenging times, and to do it together.
I think that's a great message to end on. Nadine, I really appreciate your time today. And
sure,
I know our listeners are going to enjoy this. And I'm not the representative of psychology. I understand my role, but I just want to say publicly, thank you for all that you've done. Thank you for all the people that you're helping, that you've helped, that you will continue to help. Your career and you are an amazing role model for all of us. And I'm very fortunate that I get to know you. So thank you.
Thank you. And likewise, I'm really fortunate that I've gotten to know you and we've had the chance to work together and do so again today.
I thank you so much.
Thank you.
No, it's not me crying, it's you crying.
I'm looking forward to seeing you in a couple of months, I guess.
That would be awesome. So thank you so much.
All right. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Hey everyone, Garth here. Thanks for listening to Psych Sessions. If you could go to wherever you listen to our podcast and you would follow that podcast or like it, it really does help us as we are trying to get out to more teachers of psychology. Also, if you haven't checked out our website, please visit psychsessions.org and sign up for our monthly newsletter. We offer free resources and valuable news that you are going to want to know related to the teaching of psychology. Thanks.